So for example, I think Nick Jenkins from Moonpig said one of his biggest learnings of angels was never be more than 20% of the money.
Dan from Jaffa, thank you so much for coming in.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Look, we're going to talk about funding with you today, right? But before we get into that, look, just explain to our audience exactly who you are, what you do.
Yeah, exactly. So Jaffa is all things football. So we have a two-sided proposition. We have a mobile app on iOS and Android, which takes all the latest news that's out there and puts it into one news feed for users. And we have a fan opinion section, which allows fans to debate, discuss, and engage with other fans around their passion, which is football.
Yeah.
And on the other side, we've got a behavioural analytics platform for businesses, brands, clubs, and organisations, which allows them to better understand, target, and reach those sports fans.
Okay, brilliant. Well, as I said, I want to talk to you about funding, right? Because everywhere we go, people always go, will you talk more about funding? Because we're going for funding. And we just happen to be going for funding now ourselves as well, right? We're first-time funders. We've heard so many stories. We've done our homework.
Horror stories.
Exactly, horror stories. Some really good stories, right? But just wanted to know, when it came to you guys getting funding, right? Because you've had 2 successful rounds so far. What's the total amount you've raised today?
So we've raised just under 300k across the 2 rounds, and we're currently in the process of closing off some more funding at the moment.
Some more funding, right? Okay. So when you first went for funding, how long did it take you to be happy with your pitch deck? How many doors did you have to go knocking on? You know, because as I said, this comes back to some of the horror stories that we heard, and some of the glory stories, which is the first person's door I knocked on, they invested in it, or 12 months later, I didn't realise funding was going to be a full-time job. It took me out of the game, you know, when I was off funding the whole time while the rest of the team were building the business. What has it been like for you?
It's been a journey. I think anybody that's raised funding across multiple rounds will probably give you a similar answer around that. I think the beauty of the fundraising journey is that it is a journey, and I think people need to recognise that, not to take stuff too personally. Every investor's got their own opinion, and that's based upon a whole number of different things: a career to date, different stories, maybe previous investments. Stuff happens, stuff changes, and I think it's important not to take it to heart. One thing that we did, which I would advise anybody to do, is very simple. Just get your house in order, and what I mean by that is you've got your pitch deck ready, making sure you've got a term sheet ready to send in. Some investors have a term sheet that they want to send to you, but if they don't, it's good to have legals that you can send over to them.
Did you have to get solicitors to do those up?
We did. There's a lot of legal firms. I will give them a shout out because they're on the wall. But Seed Legals are great, especially at the early early stages. And they do a good, very quick sign up process, and you can use your legals. And they can do those legals for you, or you can use a law firm. We used a law firm. They do typically very good startup rates, so they didn't charge us a penny until we'd raised funding.
Okay.
So once we'd raised, then they take typically a percentage of the whole amount you've raised.
Okay.
And it's very startup friendly, so they're not. Corporate law firms are not making their money off startups, so you know.
Well, it's handy you don't have to pay until you've raised. Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a good, and we got a very good deal with one of the partners that we knew at the law firm. So we had a good. We had a good offset from that start. But these investors, you can meet an investor in the day, and then they go out that evening and have a networking event, and then they're getting pitched again, and then there's another business. And if you leave it a week, suddenly you're at the bottom of a pile again, and that's where you want to avoid being. So if an investor says, "Can you send me what you've got?" you should be able to go almost walk out of the meeting and get a laptop open and then fire them immediately.
I have it here with me now.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a really simple point, because for every single person, if you can't do that, there's probably a queue of 10 people that can. And investors are very time poor a lot of the time, and you just need to make sure that you're just on top of your stuff. Cause
that's important, though. It's not really something that someone would have genuinely thought. Because, like, again, if people are thinking that it's going to take so long to close a round, you're not thinking I need to have my legal end ready to pounce on this. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think it's there's in the fundraising process. There's some stuff which is completely out of your control. If they want to have an accountant or a lawyer or whoever it is look at it, and that accountant's on holiday, or they've got their, they can't look at it for whatever reason, that can add a delay, but that's out of your hands. What's in your hands is you should be able to send them stuff really quickly. So you need to make from your side the process as fast as possible and as smooth as possible, and make sure that the investors feel comfortable as well, which is important. And we had our lawyer was on hand to speak to them around. This is how we've handled standard investor provisions, and explain just to them on layman's terms what's going on here, which I think really helps just to bring investors on that journey and make sure they feel comfortable with the legalities of the investment as well.
Yeah, I suppose what kind of message does it send either if if it does take you a week or 10 days to send over something after being offered money, essentially. You spoke about terms there, about sometimes they will send you a term sheet, and sometimes. Yeah. What has it typically been like for you? Is it them agreeing to your terms? Is it kind of meet in the middle stuff? What does that look like?
We kind of had our house in order at the start in terms of we had a term sheet. We were very deliberate to make sure it was very vanilla, so there was no crazy terms in there. Typically, investors want to make sure that what's the kind of equity percentage between the founders, what's already been owned in the business, is there any debt in the business, and also is everybody on the same share class? So there's nothing fruity, Facebook style, Mark Zuckerberg, God shares or anything like that.
Yeah.
EIS and SEIS are quite strict around making sure that people are on the same share class, and investors just want to know that they're protected. So if the founders get any crazy ideas and we want to go and sell, 50% of the business for £1 in 2 weeks' time, there's obviously protocols in place to stop that from happening and make sure they're protected against the standard UK investment protections, really, for investors.
We do have guests on a lot that go through crowdfunding rounds, right?
Yeah.
And how come you decided against it the first time? Because it's becoming really, really popular now, is doing those crowdfunding rounds. And football is so broad, right?
Yeah.
Loads of people love football, so it could be an interesting one.
Agreed. Yeah, we've considered crowdfunding. We've all the normal players that what we've spoken to and are speaking to, because I think, given your point, as we grow, crowdfunding is going to be a really big opportunity for us as a business. I think any business with a B2C element, crowdfunding is an option. I think when we did a lot of look at crowdfunding, and we saw when it was done best, was they brought a lot of big pre-commitment to the table. So they already had private investors already invested into the business, so they're bringing money to the table already. They already had either a successful product out there, whether that's an app or a physical product they can sell, and a customer base who could then invest off the back of it. Yeah. And I think when you have all three of those, crowdfunding is exceptionally powerful, and it gives your customers a chance to buy into the product, and it gives them a chance to touch and feel whatever they might be investing in. Yeah. Previously, when we were starting off, we didn't have the product ready, really. We didn't have it wasn't out, the app wasn't out in people's hands. And when we do crowdfunding, we want to make sure that the app is out there, people can touch and feel it, and there's a user base which can then potentially invest as well. Because we didn't have those things beforehand, we didn't pursue crowdfunding at that point. Not saying we won't do it in the future, but there's also a lot of failed crowdfunding campaigns, which no one really talks about, which don't necessarily have all of those three things, and you still need to have the private investment before you go to the crowdfunding.
Exactly,
the vast majority.
50%. Yeah. The only thing I was going to say that I'm worried about crowdfunding is it's public, right? Yeah. And obviously you need to have, say, 50% of the round closed before you go live. And if it doesn't hit the target that you want to get, and now you go, right, I'm going down the route of private funding, people will kind of go, well, it didn't work out on crowdfunding, why not? Now
could be a bit of a black mark, for sure.
Exactly,
It's potentially, I can't speak about, we haven't done crowdfunding, but I think if we did do it and we did fail, it'd be a stuff of nightmares. It would keep me up at night for sure. So I think from a founder's perspective, you'd want to make sure that the odds were stacked in your favour to succeed at crowdfunding. And I think there's definitely a place for it. There's some businesses we know have done multiple successful crowdfund rounds. And even to the point of Monzo and the much larger businesses, they've opened it up as an opportunity for their users to come in and
look at their user base, though.
They put the push notification out in the Monzo app to how many customers they got? Like 2 million?
A lot, yeah.
2 or 3 million customers that all get a notification to say invest in Monzo.
So we need 2 million customers before we can do that.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
All right, won't be too hard. Yeah. How long did it take you in terms of time, of months or weeks or years, whatever it was, when I know you had two successful rounds? How different were they when it came to closing them?
Quite different. I think our first round was SEIS, and I think that makes things easier from a funding perspective, because investors get 50% tax break on their investment, and there's a lot of money circling in that pool. Yeah. So when you're SEIS and you have SEIS, there's quite a range of options, whether that's SEIS funds, whether that's very early stage VC funds, private angels, angel groups. There's quite a few people that are willing to take a punt to some extent.
Yeah.
Very early business of that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the second round we did was EIS piece.
Sorry, how long did the first one take?
So the first one took actually around about 3 to 4 months, in terms from first pitch to money in bank. Although we actually ended up raising when everyone said not to over the summer, so July and August, which was people were away, so that put a delay on things.
Okay. Well, sorry, 3 to 4 months. But how many doors do you reckon you knocked on? How many times did you pitch?
We knocked on quite a few doors, as everybody does.
Yeah.
We had some interesting stories. We had investors who had signed term sheets and agreed to stuff, and then ended up not investing. And we had investors who didn't really get it at the start, and if you'd have asked me straight after we'd pitched, we'd be like, oh, they don't get it, they're not our right investors, so they ended up investing. So
you just never know.
You do never know. I think one thing that we did, which was quite nice, was no matter how it all went out, we try and be very amicable with, if people don't want to invest, that's their decision, and we respect that, and we thank them for their time as well, because ultimately, you want to make, leave a good impression, I think.
Yeah, because they could be investing in the second round.
Exactly, and I think and people don't. We do try and get feedback from everybody who says no around why. Is it just don't like the sector, don't like the business, don't like the team, don't like whatever it might be? Because it's good to get an understanding. Is it a no forever, or is it a no until the next round, or no until this? Because you're knocking on all these doors, you might as well keep a kind of map. Because when it comes to future fundraising, if that's part of your strategy.
Were you able to change any of them when you found out why the no was? Because like I said, some of the, I just don't understand it.
I'm trying to think through. I'm not sure just yet. We're in the middle of closing off around now, and there will be a few into that potentially, yes, we would, but that's not over the line yet. So not officially yet. But we, people have different time circumstances, biases. Everybody's done something different in their careers beforehand, and they've seen different things and have different experiences. So even one thing we did find quite interesting was even people who are very in the space that you're in still don't get it. Because they're so involved in the space that they're in, they almost can't see
the bigger picture.
Almost from an innovation point of view. They don't necessarily always get it, and that was quite interesting, and that was a learning from the funding process. Because, if you speak to people, in something that's not our space, if you probably talked around social media before social media was a thing, and you started speaking to big media companies, they probably wouldn't get it at all. Look what happened. So I'm not saying we're like that at all, but there's interesting angles, and people they sometimes can't see the bigger picture because they're so involved in the industry and have been for years.
Did you get anybody, it's something that we hear time and time again, did you get any investors that say, I will go in on this, which is great news, if someone else will lead, or if someone else will go in and come back to me?
Yeah, 100%. We've had that a few times. And that's understandable as well, for various different reasons. I think investors like to know they're not the only ones backing the horse to some extent. Helps when you've got credible investors, and we do have some very credible investors, which has helped our journey. But at the same time, to your point around knocking on doors, we knocked on a hell of a lot of doors to get those credible investors. We came into the space, kind of call it sports media, with no experience in media, no experience in sport, no connections at all. So we had to just network very aggressively, but also very targeted. So we weren't just scattergun approaching, we were really trying to find the right people and the credible people who could, ideally, as everyone says, smart money, but add value to the business as well as investing the necessary capital to move us forward.
Is footballers an option?
Footballers is an option. We do have some professional athletes on our cap table that have invested into us. We have knocked on a lot of doors, as you might imagine.
Probably even harder to knock on those again.
Footballers, we've had a great time with footballers, some really interesting conversations. Some of them have taken complete career changes off football, so almost current players, past players, and also players coming to the end of their career. We have knocked on a few doors, still are knocking on a few doors, and it's an interesting one. There's always, behind a footballer, there is almost a team. There's always an agent, and then there's potentially an accountant, financial advisor. Everybody's got an opinion, so it's not just one door you've got to knock on to close one investor. It might be 3 or 4 to close one investor, if that makes sense.
It's a couple of weeks' wages to a footballer,
the right footballer.
The right footballer, that level of investment,
Very true.
But one tweet from Ronaldo would just make the app blow up.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends, because I think influencer marketing is changing, and if you look at someone like Ronaldo, there's a lot of what do we want as a football fan app potentially? We want football fans that are going to come and debate and engage, or do we want a load of 17-year-old girls on Instagram posting pictures of Ronaldo with love hearts? You've got to make sure that there's some really interesting conversations, and we've had some interesting chats with some very controversial footballers on Twitter, to name a few, and it's been
Balotelli.
Been interesting. I won't name the names, but one of them was a very interesting character, let's say, and still is. So
I'll end up with one question. right? Because I know a lot of people when they go knocking on doors to get funding, I think a lot of them, they expect to get the full amount from the one investor, right? What has your experience been like with that? Because like a lot of people go, oh, we're looking to say raise $1 million, right? And this is how we're looking for, because you do think that you're going to get a lot of the time that you're going to get the money off the one person or company or whatever it might be. Has that been the experience?
We've been dealing predominantly with angels and high net worths. So I think when you go to in the venture world, that can be an option because they have the ability to write those kind of tickets. Depending on what stage your business is at, if you're hitting the right metrics and you've got a good conversation, they've got the ability to double down on the business. Angels and high net worths kind of sit in a separate space, unless you're talking to exceptionally, very wealthy people that can write almost super angel space. We've heard it referred to, who can write anything from 100k up to $1 million individually into businesses. They do exist. They obviously get pitched probably much more than the average angel. So our experience has been dealing with individuals. They don't have the capacity, even if they had the will, to go into to write a ticket for the full amount. And actually, sometimes that's a good thing, because getting the full amount from one person or one entity can make stuff a bit tricky, because for various reasons, when you're dealing with angels, if you know your business is going to go on for further funding rounds, if they said no, so for example, I think Nick Jenkins from Moonpig said one of his biggest learnings of angels was never be more than 20% of the money, because if you don't want to invest for whatever reason, you have your own personal reasons and stuff, if that business needs further funding and you have led the whole, you've been the biggest, almost sole investor the whole time, and then you turn around and say no more money from me, that business is almost starting from scratch, to your point earlier, with no lead investor. So it's important, I think, to keep your options open, and if you've got more people involved, there's a higher chance of you getting some more money, rather than if it's all from one person or entity. If they turn around and say no more from here, it can be a bit of a stressful time, I think.
Interesting. There's actually been so much advice there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you know what? We learned a lot from that. I'm sure the audience did. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming in.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Best of luck with the next round.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys.